Was talking to one of my buddies this week, and the topic of failure came up. It's pretty common happening on the academy floor and honestly in life. And we started having a pretty good discussion on it. And some of the things that we discussed is, your ability to confront failure. And, I've ran martial arts academy since the early 90s. And a lot of times when we set one up or we look for a location to run the academy, it's going to be a storefront. And, you're going to have glass door on the front of the academy. And most of the time, over the years, I had my office at the academy. So I would go in and I would be working in my office during the day because I've always ran different businesses. And one of the things that I noticed is people who would come up to the front door during the day, and they would walk up to the door and they'd put their hand out like they're going to open the door. And they would pause for a moment. And I'd see them go through this process in their mind. And then they would make a decision and then turn around and walk off. And this was a pretty common happening. And at one point, I started to get up and go after them and chase them down in the parking lot. I would talk to them, comfort them, and, eventually several of them would go ahead and join the academy. And after a few years, I would remind them of that moment and ask them, what was going on in your mind? Well, what made you almost make the decision to come in and then right at the last moment decide to turn around and walk off? And one of the biggest responses I got was the fact that they were going to have to put themselves in a position where they were going to fail. And they just absolutely didn't want to do that. And they didn't want to be embarrassed due to having to be in those positions of failure, which happens in a new environment. I understand that. But one of the first things that they have to do is make the decision to confront it, to realize that it's out there, it's coming. There's no way to escape it. It doesn't matter what you're doing. And just making the decision that I'm going to attack it head on. And, I see this not only at the front door. These opportunities to fail happen quite often on the mat. But that's, it's what I tell the guys often is one of the things that makes a warrior is their ability and their willingness to go headfirst into the unknown, regardless of what's in front of them, failure, any other outcome, they still move forward. They make the choice to move forward. So I think that's a pretty important thing, especially in a warrior's culture, which is generally what you're walking into inside of an academy, is to develop that trait and work on the mental tools needed to make it a habit. Because those are the things that will carry over off of the academy floor into real life and have a huge effect on those moments in life where you need that skill in order to move forward and take some action. So the ability to just recognize that it's coming. There's no one out there who has done anything at a great level of success who has not dealt with failure more than once. It's just part of the process. There's no way around it. So you got to wonder, why even try to avoid it? I know it's going to exist, but that's the part we want to avoid, is getting frozen from that fear of failure and not taking any action at all, not making the decision to move forward in life and do what it takes to make those changes. But I think there's another layer to it. And the second layer to that is your ability to make it a habit to seek out failure. And that's something we don't normally do. Life may throw something at us every now and then, and we have to deal with it. But the idea that I'm going to go and find those opportunities to fail is a little different, and much less thinking that I'm going to invest life units and consistent time into seeking failure, which is what we do on the academy floor. And honestly, anything you want to go after in life, you have to put in some consistent effort. You have to invest time. And those moments of failure create a lot of wisdom, a lot of knowledge. Sometimes I will learn something from a mentor. They'll say, you need to do this way, and I'll listen and move forward and, maybe do it appropriately, whatever it is, and look back and go, I'm glad I listened. But then there's times when I didn't listen. I know that's a surprise, but I do that quite often. And those moments where I didn't listen and I had that moment of failure, when I look back, I learned more from that moment than the other one because, well, there's some emotion involved, obviously. It's a more powerful moment emotionally, but I may also pick up additional information to whatever the skill was. I now know how not to do it. I know that way doesn't work. And I may fail 3 or 4 more times. And now I'm gaining even more information. I know these 3 ways do not work. And that's wisdom. That's wisdom and knowledge. And due to this is one of the reasons why we have nicknamed this inside the Academy, becoming a wisdom seeker. And it's a nice way of saying, seek out that failure. Seek out that moment where you can have the opportunity to gain that wisdom from it. And do it regularly. Every time I go to class, there's a moment or two where I place myself in a situation where I'm going to have a failure of some type. It's inevitable. And I want to do that on a consistent basis because of the wisdom that comes out of it. I know it's there. And I know every time I go in there and place myself in that scenario, I'm going to learn more. I'm going to get more knowledge, and I'm going to get more wisdom. The journey of wisdom is littered with moments of failure and discomfort. So it's just part of the process. We've got to recognize it and don't be afraid to go after it. I want to create more moments of failure, regardless of what I'm doing. If I'm working on business, if I'm working on a relationship, I'm on the mat and I'm working on a new move in jiu-jitsu, I want those opportunities to fail. I want those opportunities to get more wisdom because, failure is a vehicle of success. It just is. So if that was the second layer and I were to put another one on there, I would say you're going to apply pressure to those moments that you have sought out. We nickname this on the Academy floor the laboratory. Maybe I have found that moment. I've gone across the mat and I've got that one guy. He's bigger, he's better, he's younger, and I know it's coming. But I may set up the training scenario so that there is more pressure involved, more of a push. And this is going to push more failure to the surface. Sometimes when you have the ability to take your time, you can get it right. When there's not a lot of pressure or discomfort, you can get it right. But you turn that up just a little bit. And you'll notice for myself and a lot of the students that I've worked with, you'll see more failure. It seems to have come to the surface, but that's a good thing. And that's why we want to add that pressure into those moments. I'd rather learn to deal with that elevated pressure on the mat or in practice. Let's say it's for business or I'm working on a relationship. I want to learn it in practice so that I can avoid it in a real life scenario as much as possible. It's one of the reasons to train or to consistently move forward and try to develop a skill. And, part of that is going to be getting comfortable being uncomfortable. Completely outside of failing. just your ability to stand discomfort. I think this is a very important skill. And it's one that I try to work on a regular basis. Sometimes you win and, sometimes you lose or sometimes you learn. It's a pretty common saying out there. And it's very true. And another thing, when you're applying the pressure, it's going to build the willpower. Those moments when, the little voice in your head says, are you going to push forward in this moment? You might not have necessarily, you don't think you have anything left, but making that decision in that moment builds the will, makes you more comfortable being uncomfortable, both physically and emotionally. So the next part of that for me is building a tribe. And you could say a tribe of wisdom seekers. What do I mean by that? Is surrounding yourself with like-minded people. People that know we are seeking opportunities to fail and grow. They know we're going to put it into the laboratory and turn up the pressure. And they're there to help you do it. And we work together to create those environments because we know the amount of information, wisdom, and knowledge that's going to come out of it. And another thing that comes from that tribe is accountability. Especially if I have a goal that I'm trying to reach in this scenario, and I let my tribe, my partner, I let them know. They're going to hold me accountable. If I'm not showing up, or if I'm not getting that practice in, or maybe I'm not placing myself into that elevated stress level, they're going to call me out on it. But another thing that comes along with that is they're going to motivate you. I see this a lot with the guys. When we're training on the mat, we give each other a hard time, but there is a huge layer of motivation underneath it. One of the reasons they're doing it is because they know it pushes you, it drives you, and vice versa. It does the same right back to them. Another valuable aspect of this and those people around you is perspective. If I'm in that situation and I make a mistake, I learn, like we said earlier, maybe I know here's one way that it didn't work. But I can also ask my partner, what mistake did you see me making? Now, he may point out something that I completely missed. He gives me a totally different perspective. And I get to learn more from the situation. Additionally, using the example of the academy floor, we have individuals that will take a rest and they'll sit on the wall and watch. And there's almost always someone over there watching. I will ask their perspective. What did you see? What would you suggest? And I will get feedback. I may get information from 3 different sources. What I experienced, what my partner experienced, and what a bystander experienced. And if I am open-minded and I have a proper perspective, I'm going to learn a lot of information out of that position. Now, we use the academy floor as the example, but I have done this in business and in multiple other areas in my life. And, getting that outside perspective from those individuals, sometimes it might not be positive because you're going to have a critic in every crowd, right? Maybe 1, maybe 2. And, sometimes we'll shut those guys off. I don't want to hear that. But sometimes it's valuable information. And for me, generally what I do is I weigh how valuable that opinion is based on what that individual has done and what they have achieved. If they've already traveled the path that I'm walking and they've already arrived in the position that I'm going to, even though it might be a little difficult to swallow what they're giving you, it's valuable. So sometimes I have to check my ego and change my perspective on that as well, and take in that additional information, even from the critics. This environment, when it's built creates a culture around you, and it becomes, a norm. All of these things. Being comfortable with failure, not fearing it, seeking it out, turning up the pressure on it, creating a tribe of people to help you seek it more or create it more, manufacture it, because we know the knowledge and skill that comes out of it. For me, anytime, I generally have my own self-education system. So I'll plan out a year in advance topics that I'm going to work on quarterly. And I know for me, one of the things about having your individual educational process is you also want to learn what is your unique learning method. And one of mine is exactly what we're talking about. Regardless of the topic, I will go out even before I'm good at it, and I will look for an opportunity to just do it. Will I do it well? Not often, but I don't care. What I'm going to do is just start doing it, start putting myself into that position of growth. And I'll hear this sometimes, well, I'm not real good at it yet. I don't want to do this maybe professionally. And my answer to that is usually just do it. And if it's something that you're building like a business to get paid for, there might be a period of time where you don't get paid. You may just do it for free. And that's okay, because that is part of what we're discussing here, creating that opportunity to just move forward, accept failure, and grow from it. And in my experience, your growth curve, or the amount of time it takes you to get good at whatever you're working on, shortens when you're ready to move forward and go after these moments or those opportunities. So this is a pretty interesting topic that we're discussing. And it with the individual that I was discussing it with, is a pretty good conversation. And we got pretty deep on the conversation, and a lot of this came up. So hopefully you've got something out of this cast. And if you did, be sure and follow and like